What's up, guys? JB here with Luke Barnes. He is our Chief Sales Development Officer, Chief Business Development Officer, really just oversees, our organization from a sales perspective, especially with partners. And actually was our Chief Sales Officer for quite a while as well, and started off as a marketing consultant and worked his way up. So just tons of experience when it comes to sales and the processes, not just for us, but for all different types of businesses and organizations so that they can be successful, and is super passionate about sales in general. So I had him on today to share some of the tips that he's learned over the years with sales from different mentors that he's worked with and his own real life experience. And just wanted to kind of tee it up there. Luke, good to have you.
Yeah, thanks. It's glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to help anybody that I can.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. So yeah, break it down for us. Maybe what are some mentors, that you've learned some things from in the past to really that you think are as valuable to share with people with regards to sales?
Yeah, well, mentorship in sales, I think, is a really big deal for continued success and really growing. Your expertise. And so when I think about like the different mentors that I've had along the way, sometimes it's not even a professional salesperson that's mentored you, that's helped you with sales. And the first one that comes to mind is my mom. My mom, Irish, Catholic, stubborn as heck. And really, to win any conversation with my mom, you had to really kind of find out the finer details. Otherwise, that conversation would go forever. So one thing that I picked up from her was listening to understand versus listening to respond. If you get into listening to respond with my mom, you never get anywhere. And same with sales, really. So, if you're listening to just think about the next thing that you're going to say to somebody versus really understanding what their problem is and how you can fix that problem, then you're not going to see as much success. So, I think listening to understand versus listening to respond is one key that I grabbed for her. Another one was no shame. And so my mom wasn't in sales. She was a mayor. She was a reporter. She did a lot of different things. But one of the things that I remember that stands out with no shame is we were running a fundraiser to essentially go to Italy, and we didn't have enough money to pay for it for ourselves. So my mom went out and bought a bunch of drinks and a bunch of ice cream and got in her blazer and drove around to construction sites and played ice cream music out of this little speaker. And I wouldn't go with her. I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. That's totally embarrassing, to show up like that. But what she taught me is that when you're trying to help something or you have an objective, you have to really kind of put your shame or worried about being shamed on the back plate. And so that's relevant in sales as well, as like step outside that comfort zone of who you naturally are, because it's not easy to go out and ask somebody for something when you don't know them. So that's one, experiences from my mom. Another one that really kind of helped my sales career advance was when I was with a company called United Rentals. I had a sales manager named Brian Knauer. And Brian taught me two things that I've really used in sales. And the first one is extreme gratitude. If you called Brian up and you thanked him for anything, he always got a thank you back. And extreme gratitude is really being thankful just for the opportunity that they're talking to you, and always take advantage and always say a thank you with that. The other thing that Brian taught me was the power of laughter. So this guy, he would get an angry call from a client, and by the end of the call he had them laughing. And so really in sales, I've learned if you get them to laugh one or two times, you're more than halfway there. And so that brings down the wall and kind of creates different emotions in their body that make you, or they make them like me. And then really the third and one of the most influential would be your dad. When I started working here, and what Joe taught me was quality conversations are more important than anything else. In sales, you can get sidetracked with a lot of different types of metrics and how you're performing, but I've really found that quality conversations is the thing that gets your end goal. And so focusing on quality of conversations, building in a repeatable process is another thing as a salesperson. You see a lot of salespeople that can get streaky. And that's because they're not necessarily following the same repeatable process. So that all comes in with a pre-flight checklist. And that's kind of what your dad taught me as a pilot, right? You always got to go through your checklist. Am I in a good mood? Am I upbeat and cheery? Am I focused on who I'm talking to? And so, those, I think finding a sales mentor that's going to teach you different things and doesn't even have to be a salesperson, is critical. But as in sales, we should always be learning. We should always be trying to learn from other salespeople. I get a lot of sales calls here and I take them all. And really, even if I'm not interested in buying their product, I'm more interested in how are they trying to sell me on that. So, and then you just pick little things out from each one of them.
100%. Oh, I love it. Yeah, great stuff. I think, the first tip that you had there, just, listening to understand then respond is so critical because, if you're not doing that, what happens is oftentimes you're cutting people off. And I think it's really frustrating. I think we've all experienced where you're in a sales process and the salesperson just doesn't really let you finish what you're saying. They don't let you necessarily talk, and that loses a lot of trust. So I think that's a great tip. And then as far as being shameless, I think that just goes back to, doing whatever you got to do to get it done, but also to serve the customer. And I think being shameless, to me, a lot of times salespeople will, fail because of greed, because they're trying to sell something the customer doesn't need, or trying to push a higher price point or something because that benefits their commissions.
Right.
But does that benefit the customer? And I think being shameless is doing what's best for the customer at the end of the day. I think that's super critical. And then, to your point about just making people laugh, people, we say it all the time around here, people buy from the salesperson more so than the product. So if they like you as a salesperson, that's what you want, right? That's the number one goal. Then they're going to trust whatever it is that you're presenting to them as a solution. And so laughing is a big piece of that. If you can get them to laugh, then you're moving them in the right direction. And I can even say, in my experience in coaching, if I get the kids to laugh about some stuff, it creates like a better relationship. And then I can, hey, but let's get serious, guys. We need to turn up the intensity, and then they listen to that more. And so it's the same thing in the sales process. And, I've learned a lot of sales tips from my dad over the years too. And, I think those are great tips in terms of what's your checklist for the day, in terms of just setting your mindset. I think even when you look at golfers, professional golfers or any great athlete, a lot of times they also have some reminders like, hey, stay focused, keep my head down, keep my elbows straight. They obviously should know this stuff after playing for 20 something years, but it just goes to show you how resetting the mind is really important. And if you're a sales professional, then you should have that same sort of a process, which I think is a great tip. And in terms of just continual learning, what are some tips that you have on that front? You're saying you're always learning, you're taking sales calls. Do you do anything else? Any other power tips on that front to stay motivated and educated and keep getting better?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, and I think it's a great place for salespeople to hang out. And one of the things I like about LinkedIn is the LinkedIn Learning kind of section that they have. If you're not familiar on something, and that's part of sales, right? And especially in what we do, as is always changing, and tomorrow there could be something new that affects how everybody markets. So if you're not familiar with something, you have to be the expert on it, and you have to continually educate yourself on that. And I found LinkedIn is a really easy way to kind of digest that information. And then also taking a look at, you can learn from your competition a lot of the times too, and keeping an eye on how they do things and what they do. So back in the day, I used to call all of our competitors just to really understand what they were saying and how can we be different, and how can we connect with the client in a better way, and how do we not be that salesperson that just talks and throws a price at you, and then you say no and they throw a lower price at you, and then you say no and they throw a lower price at you. Like, in my mind, that's what I think when I initially didn't want to go into sales growing up, because I thought that's what sales was trying to push something that somebody didn't want. And really what you end up learning in sales is just helping somebody do something that's better for them. You have a solution, and if you believe that solution is going to help them, really all sales is just getting them to understand how that's going to fit for them. So, your communication style is definitely going to be important in that. So learning to communicate with first learning what communication style you are is important, and then learning how you can adapt your communication style to different types of personalities.
100%. I love it. Yeah, actually, you just, kind of made me think as you were talking there. We had a leadership speaker this week actually talk with our leadership group, guy by the name of Phil Hicks, and he had a really great conversation with us about change. But when he started the conversation, he said, relationships are my equity. And I
Yeah,
thought
I
that was
wrote that
pretty
one down.
powerful. Yeah, I thought that was really powerful because that to me is sales. Like sales, relationships should be your number one equity. And if you do well at that, then the sales piece and the commissions and all those things, that just takes care of itself. And so how are you attacking every conversation? Like, how do you build a relationship so that there's equity there? And I think if you focus on that, you're going to make people laugh. You're going to listen to them, right? Friends will stay with you forever. A customer will stay with you a month. And so how are you building friends and relationships? And I think it all goes back to that piece. So I thought that was pretty powerful to share. Luke, I know you work with B2B a lot, and I know there's a lot of B2B followers of our content. What are your tips on, I know you've talked a lot about different personality traits of business owners and the different types of personality traits there are, like drivers, et cetera. Maybe you could give us the quick recap on that, because I think that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, sure. I mean, understanding communication styles is done in usually the first 10, 15 seconds of a phone call. And it's even easier now that we have Zoom because I can see you and I can read a lot of your nonverbal communication. But if you're just doing phone sales, really the things that I look for initially is the tone and the pacing. Like, what kind of mood are they in? How are they speaking to me? And really what you want to try and do in any personality recognition is mirror what that person is doing. People are going to like to buy things from people that are like them. And so if you're talking to, maybe somebody on the East Coast that's a fast talker and they like to go fast, then go fast. But also know that when you talk to somebody in the South, you probably need to slow it down and match their style. So, you have drivers, which are essentially going to make a decision once they've reached 50% of, I think that's right. They make emotional decisions. And so you want to play to what is the pain point or the emotion for that specific person. And then opposite of them, you have analyzers. And analyzers are essentially need to be 85% sure that this is the best decision. They don't want to make a bad decision. And so really you need to do a little bit of different type of selling to them, of showing more material. If I can't see it, I don't believe it if I'm an analyzer. And then, you have your craftsmen, and your craftsmen are typically people that like to do the same task over and over. They like safe environments. And so for them, you don't see a whole lot of craftsmen in entrepreneurs or in salespeople. But for those people, you need to try and put yourself into talking about this is a safe long-term decision. And then you have your persuaders, and your persuaders are energetic. They like things that are shiny. They like things that are new. They want to be the best out there. And so for them, you have a little different type of how this is going to separate you from your competitors. So, the first thing is you need to understand what kind of person you are so that you can adapt to that type of communication style, and then understand what type of communication styles turn other people off is kind of the main thing to understand on that.
Awesome. Well, great tips so far. I know we're running low on time here, but maybe you could just share us, your top 3 tips on success, if you would, and then we can close it out.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think really in sales, and this is just kind of in life success tips for myself, the first rule is do what's right. Do what's right by the client. Do what's right by your company. Don't sell somebody something they don't need. Don't lie about it. Like, be honest and truthful. That's kind of down to morals. Do what's right. The second thing I think that's important in sales for success is to compete with the best version of you. When I think of competing with the best version of me, I think of that day that I just crushed the calls. That's who I want to compete with when I'm calling. And that day that I just, had a great consultation. That's who I'm competing with. A lot of times in sales, we have leaderboards and people are trying to compete with the guy that's on the top. And the guy that's on the top has built himself up that way, and by focusing on how they can get better themselves. And so when you focus on competing with the best version of you, you're continually moving that mark forward. You're getting better and better. And then the third thing is win at everything you do. And that doesn't mean don't lose, because I think we learn a lot from losing. It means your effort, really. And it's more of a mindset of winning at everything you do. I'm not going to give up, which is another key tip for sales, is unless they go out of business or they die, that's still a lead, and you want to keep following up with them. But winning at everything you do is really not accepting no, and giving it your best effort no matter what. So, do what's right, compete against the best version of you, and win at everything you do. I think are good 3 tips.
Boom. I love it. Let's make t-shirts.
All right.
Yeah. It's really good. Well, hey, I appreciate you being on today and very valuable information. Hopefully everybody watching really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Follow us for more content like this down the road. Subscribe if you're interested in seeing this type of content, and share this with your friends, anybody else in sales, anything like that. If there's great tips that you have that we didn't touch on, please throw it in the comments. We appreciate you guys, and happy marketing.